Hi, Line One. It is I, Mr. Adams, here to talk to you again a little bit about this week and a couple of other things. I'm going to go over the answers of the last supplemental bonus, which was over disease. I have a new supplemental bonus for you to try and put in your answers this time around. But necessarily, just wanted to check in, say hello, and to report some good things. One is that we had a grade posting this week in Infinite Campus. And again, let me express how appreciative and how much I am proud. And again, the word is appreciative for those of you who are doing work. Due to your work on Canvas, out of the 37 Latin 1 students that I teach, 20 actually raised their averages. Two people actually went from a failing grade below 70 to now a above grade of 70. And for most of you, the point climb was rather modest. In some instances, it was only a point or two. But let me assure you that I will, again, in this last 1/8 of the school year, that's how much time we have left. At the very end, when I add in things like extra credit, I'm going to be taking into consideration those of you who've been doing the work, and for those of you who have raised your averages, and I am going to bump you up a little bit even more. So it's not just what you yourself raise up. I'm gonna push you a little bit myself, and so in that way, let me encourage you to continue to do the work and to put stuff on Canvas with retakes and the like. Speaking of which, last time I was talking to you about a week ago, I had said that I was going to be making the major exams. That's my goal for today and tomorrow. I've been busy trying to get all of your grades from Canvas put into Infinite Campus and things of that nature. And again, the only grades into Infinite Campus that I'll put from Canvas are those that are higher than your average in a particular section. And so, again, the only thing that can move forward for you is improvement. If you don't do well on something on Infinite Campus, or I should say Canvas, I'm not going to put it into Infinite Canvas. However, let me point this out as well as a bit of a strategy for some of you. There are three sections of grades that you get in Latin 1. One is titled daily work, one is titled quizzes, but those are essentially the same thing. I just usually put chapter quizzes in the quizzes category and then other stuff in the other one. However, for all intents and purposes, they are essentially the same. I think that one's about 25-30%, another's about 25-30%, so roughly about half of it comes from that. Then there is, of course, the major exams. The major exams, and we've only had 3 of them, are 35% of your grade. And so when I put up the previous major exams that we have taken, chapters 1 through 7, and then chapters 1 through 12, if you were to retake one of them, let's say that you had made a rather poor grade on one of them, like in the 30s or 40s or 50s, and you could turn that around and make a decent grade on it, it will help your average so much more than simply a quiz here or there. Because we have had so many grades, over 50 of them, just simply one quiz, let's say you retake a vocab, doesn't move the needle as much. But some of y'all, and I'm incredibly happy and proud about it, have been really taking a lot of vocab quizzes, and you've been going in the right direction. And I'm going to be texting you people individually that I see that you've been doing some great work to thank you personally. But there are things that you can do definitely to improve your standing. But just one or two things here or there usually won't do it as much. It will if it is the major exam. And so, like I said, I hope to have that up and ready. If there are any other requests besides the vocab and a few other quizzes that were requested last week that I put on there, I think chapter 13 multiple choice, chapter 14 multiple choice, chapter 5 multiple choice, I put those up on there because they were requested. Please request them of me. It's perfectly fine. Also, at this time, I'm going to say one of 3 fruits, and that would be peaches. In the recordings that I'm going to be doing, I'm going to put a quiz on Canvas, and all you have to do is to list the 3 items that I say throughout the video. They're going to be done randomly, not at the end. So to reward those of you who actually watch these things, there'll be another fruit in a couple of minutes. That will be the second one. So if you can remember peaches, the second fruit, and the third fruit, I'm going to put on Canvas a little quiz for you to be able to take. And by watching this video, you're gonna get a 100 for it. If you do the bonus and also do the quiz, then you'll end up with actually a 110, I suppose, maybe 115 even. But at any rate, so if you have any requests of quizzes that you would like me to put on there, then certainly. Also, as a strategy for those who want to retake a vocab quiz, if you've got something like a 0 or a 25 and you go in and you make a 95, that will help to move the needle a little bit more. So again, 20 out of 37 have raised your average here on Canvas. I'm incredibly happy about it, and I really encourage you to keep it up, as it were. Secondly, next week we'll have chapter 23. And also I'm going to have some videos made of me going over a new couple of tenses, which are the pluperfect and future perfect tense. So again, I'll have an incentive for you to watch those. Again, there'll be 3 items embedded into those videos that you can simply then go on Canvas and take a quiz, receive a 100 for simply, watching them and hopefully learning from them. Again, why work in Canvas? As I've said before, there are 2 reasons. One, you're going to be in Latin 2 next year. You're going to need to know these things, know the vocab, know the structures, the forms, and the like. Obviously, we'll do some review at the beginning of the year. And then even those of you who, the idea of raising your grade is not as appealing. Some of y'all have, 95, 96 average. Well, it still helps to get at 98, 99. And even if you're at a 100, again, for me, it is that the only part of school that I don't like is the stress that comes along with grades, the necessity of trying to do things necessarily that I find burdensome. The greatest part of school is learning new stuff. And so I hopefully would encourage you, even if you're satisfied with your grade, get it a little bit higher, and also enjoy the idea that you can learn and you can do the stuff and you don't have to stress about your grade going down. It's impossible for your grade to go lower. But again, even if it's only been a modest gain, I've noticed, those of you who've been doing work, I kept track of it. And I wrote down every single person who I saw their grade had raised from the last posting. And so I'm going to make sure that I especially go out of my way to try and help you. The second fruit now, you need to know blueberries. And I'm now going to go over the supplemental bonus from last time. So hopefully you will enjoy the answers that are there. There were, in Latin 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people who submitted their supplemental bonus answers. I encourage you to let it be a little bit higher. So these were the questions for disease. Number 1, the Hippocratic Oath begins, "First, do no harm." Harm is the word there. You had to fill in the blank, and that is important as a doctor. You don't want to make things worse. You want to make sure that you do everything you can, but more importantly than doing to help is just don't harm. Number 2, the number 1 killer of people in the United States on a year-end basis is heart disease. Heart disease. We got to make sure that we take care of our heart. It's rather prevalent. Number 3, the American Lung Association, to determine whether you have, it started because of tuberculosis, and the organ that is a test for it is skin test. Your skin is actually an organ, and it's one of, if not the largest organ of your body. And so a skin test. I think I've had one before when I was a kid, but I can't be quite sure. STDs we learn about in health class, sexually transmitted disease. They used to be known as venereal diseases because of the god Venus of love, and of course how they're transmitted. Number 5, corona of coronavirus is a crown. So that's why it's called that. The virus itself looks as though it has a crown, and so that's why it has the term. Or the corona of the sun is like a crown. Number 6, I talked about Tay-Sachs disease and ethnicity, the Ashkenazi. That is an ethnicity, a subcategory of Jewish people, usually considered to be those from Central Europe. Who, of course, bore a lot of the brunt of the Holocaust, but Ashkenazi. Tons and tons of Ashkenazi Jews are now residing in the United States. Polio is a focus of the Rotary Club, a service organization that you find spread throughout the country. And there are only 2 countries in which you can still find the majority of polio cases. I said they were both in Asia, and they would be Afghanistan and Pakistan. So if we could wipe out polio in those 2 places, we could pretty much get it licked, completely eradicated, kind of like what we did with smallpox in the 1970s. Number 8, I asked about the Susan Komen Foundation, and I need to be specific, and so that, of course, was Breast cancer. Breast cancer was the thing that it fights. Number 9, humans and armadillos are the only two animals that can contract and to spread leprosy. I said it was mentioned a lot in the Bible, and of course it is. And then finally, the last question, number 10, was about the bubonic plague. What were the two animals more responsible for its spread than any others? And that would be the flea and the animal to which the flea was parasitic, which were rats. Rats and fleas were the ones. So, all right. Your last fruit is plum. So if you can remember those 3 fruits that I've said throughout here in the video, then you can fill out a quiz on Canvas and receive a free 100. Now, if you would like to answer these bonus questions, I've made up a new set right here on my trusty sticky notes, then certainly offer up your answers. There'll be a place on Canvas for you to do so. That way you won't have to text me and I'll have to not write it down, but I'll have it right there available for anybody who wants to do so. And by answering these, whether you get them all right or all wrong, you will receive 10 extra points on a quiz. And if it's the quiz here that you've chosen to find those 3 fruits, then obviously I'll add the 10 points to that one. It's all the same. Okay, so number 1. Your category for this supplemental bonus is spring or springtime. I've very much been enjoying the weather. I like having my recordings and classes outside, as I have done today, and so I've unfortunately during a time of this pandemic and isolation, but at least the weather is nice, and so spring is going to be our category now. Number 1. Now, lots of people hate spring because they suffer from allergies from pollen. And I think that we're over the most pollination and the worst days of pollen so far. But within 50%, what number has represented the highest pollen count this spring? And it was really one of the highest we've ever seen. I think it was back in late March. And by I say within 50%, if the answer is 100, and the answer is not 100, it's much more than 100. But if the answer is 100, I would take an answer anywhere between 50 and 150, because 50 and 150 are within 50% of 100. So that's what I mean. So what within 50% is the pollen count high that we've experienced this year? Number 2, one of my favorite, if not my favorite painter, is named Alessandro Botticelli. He was an Italian from the 15th century, and his works are, of course, displayed in a museum in Florence called the Uffizi. It's fantastic. And you walk into this one room, the Uffizi, and it is called the Botticelli room. And in it, he has one of his more famous paintings. His most famous is called Birth of Venus, in which it shows the birth of the goddess on a shell surfing. But there's another one called La Primavera, which is Italian simply for spring. However, it is literally 2 words, prima vera. What are the literal translation of primavera? And if you don't know the answer, or if you figure it out, or when you hear the answer next time, you'll completely understand why that would be an appropriate term for spring. Number 3. We are currently in the month of April, one of only 2 months that are completely within the season of spring. And at the very beginning of the year, we had a couple of days in which we talked about the evolution of English. And I read the first lines of a particular work, and that was, "One that April with his sure suit, and the drought of March hath pearth the root, and bathed every vein in stitch liqueur, of which engendered is the flower," or something of that nature. Either tell me the work from which those lines famously come, or the author. One that April with his sure suit is a work of what author, or you can tell me the work in and of itself. Number 4. During the springtime, there is an opportunity to be involved with something for some people called a Seder. What would you be doing, or what would you be involved in if you were a part of the Seder? S-E-D-R, the Seder. Number 5. In the spring, you can count on the television station or the television company ABC on a Saturday night, usually in early spring, if not even a little bit, it's usually early spring, we'll show a movie. And this movie is like 4 hours long. It stars a star called Charlton Heston, and it's got Yul Brynner. It has another famous old actor called Edward G. Robinson. And my family, my children, watched this whole movie, not at the same time, but we recorded it and watched it in installments. So what is that movie that as every year that I've been alive, as I can remember it, ABC has shown it in early spring. It's a rather old movie. It's older than I am. But what is that movie that is shown on a Saturday night? Number 6. Spring comes around and there is an animal that shows up to my house that I absolutely hate. It is the bane of my existence. As I speak right now, I am within 10 feet of this animal, maybe 15, 20. But this animal is very often confused with another one because of its very close similarity in its appearance. Now, to give you a clue on that, the character in Harry Potter, Albus Dumbledore, Albus is intentional as his name. It's the Latin word for white. But so is the name Dumbledore because Dumbledore is derivative of the Latin word for a particular animal. And the animal that I hate is very similar in its appearance to Dumbledore. So specifically, what is the animal that I hate? To give you another clue, that animal, I hate it because of its affinity for a material. At any rate, number 7. To switch it up a little bit, let's talk about a different kind of spring, an aquifer. An aquifer is an underwater river or lake. Essentially, it is a reservoir. One of the largest in the entire world and the greatest aquifer in the United States is called the Ogallala. The Ogallala Aquifer. It is huge, and the amount of water that it contains is tremendous. The Ogallala can be found, parts of it, under 8 states. 8 states. So you'll get it right if you can name one of those 8 states, and you'll get double credit if you can name the state that is the epicenter and contains the majority of the Ogallala Aquifer. It's incredibly important, the Ogallala. Number 8, let's talk about a different kind of spring. A spring that stretches and then bounces back. In my activity of Quiz Bowl, of which I've been a coach and I've played and all that sort of stuff, whenever I hear something about spring, I know the answer is a law named after a particular person. Who is the person whose law deals with springs? Now, I'll give you some hints on this. This person's name can mean an item of which a variety is known as a treble that I've dealt with in my lifetime, a treble blank. This person's law, you take his name, and Dustin Hoffman played a titular character who had this name in a movie that also co-starred as the protagonist, Robin Williams. I'm somewhat of a fan of this movie. It's a pretty good one. I like it. And then lastly, this man's name can also signify a part of a song. So whose law deals with springs? Treble. Dustin Hoffman was the titular character, meaning the character was the title of the movie. And also this man whose law deals with springs is, of course, a part of a song. Number 9. If you ever go to Rome, you should make sure that you visit a particular site that is not well known. It's right off of the Forum, and as if you climb the Capitoline Hill from the Forum, you can go right past it. And it is the Roman prison. It was not very big at all. It was about the size of my room at school. It was known as the Mamertine prison, also known as the Tullianum, because the King Servius Tullius built it. And to get to it, you have to go into a church and then walk down. It was underground, and there was one hole in the ceiling that the prisoners were lowered. At any rate, the church that is on top of it is called San Pietro in Carcere, which is Italian for St. Peter in prison, because, according to tradition, St. Peter was held in that prison. And according to legend, he caused, due to a miracle, the prison to have a spring naturally bubble up. And the question then is, For what activity specifically was the purpose of that spring? What activity particularly? Now, this is your last question, number 10. Alexander Pope was an English author of the early 1700s, late 1600s. I can't quite exactly know. He was a rather short man. He was incredibly witty, incredibly smart, and he was the man who actually delivered William Shakespeare's eulogy at his funeral. And of course, being such a great author, he's honored like the greatest of all Englishmen and others who had the opportunity to be buried in Westminster Abbey. And so, of course, the silly trivia is who's the only pope buried in Westminster Abbey? All the popes are buried in St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. Well, the answer is Alexander Pope, who is not a pope in the traditional sense that you think. But one line of his that I've known since my teenage years that I like very much is that blank springs eternal in the human breast. And so, what is that blank from Alexander Pope's famous line, blank springs eternal in the human breast? I think it's from maybe his essay concerning human understanding or something of that nature. I forget exactly what it's from, but what springs eternal in the human breast? So, hopefully you've watched this, you've gotten your 3 fruits, you can try your answers, but lastly, I'm going to try for tomorrow to again at 1 p.m. Hold a class meeting if anybody so wishes for Latin 1, 1 p.m., Latin 2 p.m., AP Latin 3 p.m. So I'll hopefully see you there. I'll send out another Zoom invitation, but go on Canvas, try your hand at the quizzes, and thanks for listening and answering the trivia questions. So I'll see you later, hopefully. Bye.